Jack at the helm here. And I'm really looking forward to doing this show with you because you've worked all year on creating your own big board, so to speak. And so while there's all these professionals out there trying to, this is what they do for a living, I think it's going to be kind of fun to do this show with you because you have been doing this all year on your own, kind of like, let's say you're an amateur status of sort of making the selection. So I think we got the second pick in.
Yeah, it's coming in. It's coming in right now. Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper. So we've got. I mean, listen. There are. I've been on Twitter a lot more lately than I've been in a long time. There have been more people who have someone else at number two than Dylan Harper, which is very surprising to me. But I think it's a clear 1-2. Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and I've got our big board up right now, which you can't see, JD, but Cooper Flagg
It's
number one,
okay.
Dylan Harper number two, and this is
Yeah,
where I
we didn't start right in the beginning. So were you surprised by Cooper Flag at number one?
shocked.
Shocked. Shocked, you say?
Yeah, no, obviously not. Um, I mean, listen, the thing I think that's most surprising to me about Coop is the amount of people who do not think he's a generational type prospect or even a number one option. And something you can speak to, JD. This guy, how much better would you say Cooper Flag got from the time when he was 17, when we kept saying he's only 17, he's still 17, to when he finished the year as an 18-year-old? How much better would you say he got throughout the season?
I'm going to say at least 50% better. And they had on early his high school coach from Mount Verde at Mount
Verde.
Bird,
Yeah.
right? And he said he's completely coachable and his work ethic. So if that isn't the two things that could portend for why Cooper Flag will only grow, we watched it, his coach watched it, and now he goes into the NBA. And so, do we have to manage expectations a little? Do we think he's going to dominate in year one because he's Cooper Flag? No. We know that he is going to affect the game, playing alongside, let's say, Anthony Davis and one of our other favorite Dukies,
Yes. And
Derek Lively.
by the way, I still it's still crazy to me that that happened. That Cooper Flag's on the Dallas Mavericks. Like, of all the things to have happened during the draft lottery, if you would have told me that before it happened, and you said this is definitely going to happen, put your money on it, I would have said no way.
Well, and our subscribers are probably tired of all of my whining about can Cooper Flag spend another year at Duke rather than wind up being banished to, Washington or Utah or whatever. And he winds up with a point, what, 0.3, whatever it was, chance of winding up in Dallas. And he goes on an established team. Uh, but couldn't be happier for the guy, and it's going to be so much fun watching him mature in the NBA. So tell us about Dylan Harper. Why do you like him?
Man, Dylan Harper. Look, there's Cooper Flag. We know. You and I know everything about Cooper Flag there is, but with Dylan Harper, look, there was a time where before last season started, there was a conversation about who was going to be the number one pick. And Dylan Harper was in that conversation with Cooper Flag and his teammate at Rutgers, Ace Bailey. And to me, when you watch Dylan Harper at Rutgers, he looked the part of a number one option in the NBA. which in and of itself, there's very few of those guys. A lot, like, technically every team has one, but not every team really, like, do they really have one, right? It's like somebody's got to score 20 points, but
True.
are they really, is that really the role they're designed for? A good example of that would be Mikal Bridges, who, when he initially went to the Nets, he had that 25 game sample. It looked like, wow, how good is Mikal Bridges? He could be the number one option. But then when he had to do it over the course of a full season, it wasn't sustainable. I think Dylan Harper can do it over the course of a full season. The question for me is, how high is his ceiling? And ultimately, can he improve as a shooter? I think the shooting, the off the dribble shooting, is going to be a key factor for Mr. Harper. And now we're getting close here for the Sixers, and this is where the draft really starts.
All right,
And
Jack. So who do you think will the Sixers pick?
man, so we've heard a lot of smoke about Ace Bailey declining to go meet with them, declining to go work out for them. So it would be a major surprise if they end up still picking him here. I gotta say, I would think this pick is VJ Edgecombe. A smaller guard, yes, which, is maybe not the best because of their current guards, Tyrese Maxey and our guy, Jared McCain, and Quentin Grimes, who's not a small guard. He's 6'5". But VJ Edgecombe does things a little bit differently than those other two guards. He is a better defender. He's a better athlete. And he's a guy who can play off the ball. And so I think that helps. So I think that's going to be the pick. But like I was saying earlier, this is where the draft really, really gets going. And this is what makes things exciting. So the pick is in. And, man, I'm very curious where they're going to go here, because Philadelphia, the Sixers, the fact that they're picking third after they're supposed to be contending for a championship says a lot in and of itself. But look, it's a question of which, direction are they going to go. And they've said they're doubling down on Maxey, George, and Embiid, which after we just watched the two teams in the finals, doesn't seem like a great plan based off the health of Embiid and George, and you need a lot of guys. So here we go. The pick is coming in here. We're probably a little behind everyone else, but who do you got?
And you were correct.
VJ Edgecombe. Yeah. Well, listen, JD, we got to see a little bit of VJ. He was on that Baylor team that Duke bludgeoned, quite frankly. But there were some moments for VJ in that game. He had a nice backdoor alley-oop. He had a couple of deflections and steals and passing lanes. I think he gives them a different dynamic that they didn't have. So I think it makes sense, and I think it also makes sense for if after this year they say, look, this Embiid George pairing is not going to work. We need to rebuild around Maxey. You've got some pieces all of a sudden with your young guards, Maxey, McCain, Edgecombe. It's not where you want it to be a year ago, but it could be all right.
How tall is Edgecombe?
He's listed at 6'4", the 6'8" wingspan. And that's, to be clear, all of these heights. So on the big board here, I have certain guys are their height, weight, wingspan is in like a darker green, and those are from the official measurements from the combine. So some players, especially the international players, we don't have the official measurements, or I didn't get those. So we don't. Those could be. They're probably a little bit bigger listed than what they actually are. And importantly, all of these heights are without shoes. This is a very important thing. Very important.
When you told me that, it's very interesting. How would we even know? So that does that mean that when we hear the heights in college, it's usually with the sneaker.
Exactly. So like our guy, Con Knipple, 6'7", is actually 6'5".
Really?
And it's very interesting. I saw him in an interview and they said he's 6'7", and he said, no, I'm actually only 6'6", because that's his height in shoes, right? And they play in shoes. And so I think he was getting ahead of the combine measurements coming out for him and saying like,
Well, I think that's it's probably legitimate both ways because you play the game of basketball in sneakers.
mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, how tall are you really? So, they're both kind of relevant stats for the NBA team to evaluate.
One more thing on VJ before we move
Sure.
on here, because the Hornets are on the clock. I think VJ is going to be a really good pro, and part of the reason for that is similar to Cooper. For those of you who may not know or don't remember, VJ was one of the leading scorers for that Bahamas team in Olympic qualifying over last summer. He was playing with grown men against grown men. Similar, we heard a lot about Cooper and how well he did against the U.S. team with the select team. And I think that goes a long way with his confidence getting into the NBA.
So, with just under 3 minutes for Charlotte, is this draft also known as the Brooklyn Nets draft?
That's a great point to bring up, and obviously we're a few picks away from Brooklyn, but yes, a key storyline to watch tonight is not only who do they draft, but what are their moves? Like, what are they gonna do? Because they've got, as you just alluded to, they have a sixth of the draft.
Yes.
Of the first round. So
it's crazy.
Yeah. Listen, the amount of times I've done, 2K franchise modes, I don't think I've had that many first round picks. So, yeah, I think the thing that I think is most interesting about that aspect is they've had the same general manager for the past 8 to 10 years. So he took over after the failed Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade. He brought in Durant, Kyrie, James Harden, and now he's back for another rebuild. Or not back, but he's still around. And so this is the first time, though, that they've had a lottery pick in his tenure. And so, yeah, it's a great point to bring up here, JD. And
Jack, could you imagine, what do you think's going on in their team
like war
room? Yeah, war room, exactly, because they're like, most teams would have maybe 1, maybe 2 picks in the first round. These guys are like, their big board's probably all over the place going, all right, what do we do? Do they package any of the picks for a trade? I mean, who knows?
Who knows? By the way, VJ Edgecombe was just dapping up Buddy Hield, talking about that Bahamas team, one of his guys from there. But yeah, to your point, I don't see any way that they walk away with 5, picks. I think I saw somebody, it was like 4 was the most any team. It was like 3 times that they've drafted 4 first rounders, but 5, that's just, even though they've got basically a blank slate to work with, that's a lot of rookies. That's just a lot of rookies. So I think you move. Next year's draft is very strong. Maybe you can, get a pick in next year's draft, or maybe you can, like the Spurs last year, they ended up they traded their, I think it was the 8th pick or the 9th pick to the Timberwolves, and they got the Timberwolves like 2031 first rounder. So in the event Anthony Edwards leaves, something that could be very valuable. And I think that's what I would be trying to do if I were the Nets. Look to get some future assets out of this.
I know as you said, we're far away from that, but I thought it's one of the great storylines for the draft. So we'll see. Obviously, there was no tension at number one, so that we needed a little bit more to, you know, to try to figure out what are the potential storylines, because there's usually a trade somewhere in the first round.
Oh yeah, and I mean, speaking of trades, actually, let's hold off. The pick is in. The pick is in
Okay.
for the Charlotte Hornets.
Who do you got? Who do you got?
I'm gonna say, as of right now, which is all the time we have, so there's gonna be no future decision here. I'm gonna go with our guy, Con Knippel. That's my
Okay.
prediction. That's my prediction. And then we'll wait and see. Now, as we're waiting, I think the Hornets are in a very interesting position because I think they've got a new owner. They have a new head coach, new front office. I think they're starting to change the way they're run as a franchise. At the same time, I'm not sure how well LaMelo Ball fits into what they're trying to do. And that's going to be a decision they're going to have to make if he doesn't adjust to what they're looking for.
And you are correct.
How about that? How about that? Con Knippel going to the Charlotte Hornets. I think, listen, MJ's gone, but the Charlotte Hornets have a long track record of taking ACC products. They just do. They like their Duke guys. They like their North Carolina guys. Oh, look, there's several Knippels there. There's Coach Shire. It looks like all the Knippels, let's be fair. All of them are there. They travel as a pack. We know those guys. So
they can field us. They can field their own team.
They sure can. They sure can. And I can't remember which Knippel it is, but the next oldest Knippel is already taller than Con. There's Coach Shire.
You know, one of the things about Con is, if you can remember, in the beginning, we couldn't figure out what his style was. And then the best news was the reports about his work ethic and how he was playing in their scrimmages. And there was like a lot of buzz that came out of the scrimmages. Then we saw it early on against some of the lighter teams Duke played. And then he seemed to fade a little bit. And then over the last 20 games or so, he was just great. And you could see his stock rising into a first-round pick. I don't know that anybody had him other than you right now as number 4.
Well, I didn't. I had him number 6 on my big board. I had him number 6. Close, but not quite. And to your point, a couple of things, right? Like, this wasn't a guy who was really even thought of as necessarily a lock to be a one and done, or even really talked much about as a one and done when he got to Duke. Then, as you said, over the summer, it was, man, every time you watched the Duke podcast, who's impressing you? It was like every guy. Con. Right? And then the start of the year, first couple of games, the exhibitions, we maybe drank too much of the Con Kool-Aid, and I think at one point we said he's going to be the leading scorer for this Duke team. We went a little too far.
Jack, look, wait, pause a second and take a good look at the picture there.
I gotta listen. I got the sound on a little bit. We gotta listen to the Knippel, the Con 5, the Knippel 5.
It's great. The K5. They're all dressed up. They all look good. They all look like his.
Look how big the one on the right is, though.
I know. They all look like his brother. You know, it's great. What a great moment.
I like how they all have the same suit, but in different colors. And Con's the only one with a tie.
Yes. And you know, something else I noticed was that so did Cooper Flagg have a tie. Kaman doesn't have one. Well, when you see how he's dressed, he very, very interesting how he's dressed. He looks great tonight. The Flying Knippel brothers.
Oh. Khan, I missed all the names. Man, I do think. Look, I think Khan's a guy. Talking about Khan, the prospect, I think he's a guy with a high floor and maybe a higher ceiling than people think. Maybe a higher ceiling than people think, but
So, Jack, what do you think? In the history of Duke and their siblings, could this be like the Plumlee pipeline and there's many more Knipples coming to Duke?
I mean, hard to say. Hard to say. There's so many of them, you know? There's way more. There's 5 compared to 3. So, man, I now this is where it gets interesting to me because
That's right. We got a minute, got about a little over a minute. So focus on Utah.
on Utah, like, first of all, I think because we're getting to picks 5 and 6 here, and these were the worst teams in the league, and the Jazz and the Wizards, and what do they get for it? Picks 5 and 6. So I think that's important to bring up. Now the Jazz, you know, man, their roster, they've got some talented players, but there's no one you look at and say like, this guy's gonna be, the guy's gonna lead them to the next, phase to get them back into winning ways. Even their all-star player Lauri Markkanen, it's hard to see him staying because he's 28, 29 years old, and they've got a long ways to go, especially because they're in the West.
All right, Jack, who's it going to be?
I don't
Can you
think
keep your,
it's Bailey.
can you, okay.
I'm going to say Trey Johnson. See if we can go 5 for 5.
All right. And Trey, I love because he's just just a fantastic shooter. It was great. Wasn't he injured and then he came back for Texas? He missed, I think, part of the season for Texas, and then he came, and they were thrilled to have Trey Johnson back.
Well, listen, Trey Johnson was like the offense for Texas.
Yep.
He missed a couple of games. My only concern with Trey. Now, I think Trey's a very competitive player. I think there are times where he doesn't defend the way he should with his athleticism. But I mean, we're talking a lot about Trey. I don't even know if Trey's the pick. Let me hold off. Let me hold off for a second here, because I think you're a little ahead of me. You'll let me know. It is Ace Bailey.
So you went 4 for 4, and then there it is.
All right, there we go. Now it's gonna get bad. If I get one more, we'll have a great night. Ace Bailey. I didn't think the Jazz would take him, and that's shame on me.
How do you think he fits in with Lauri Markkanen and add another Dookie?
And Kyle Filipowski and Walker Kessler, they've got some size. I think, honestly, I didn't think they would pick him, but if Ace Bailey is gonna be the player he thinks he can be, I think this is a great landing spot for him because he's gonna get the opportunity, and they really needed somebody at this small forward spot with Ace Bailey's size. Ace Bailey, we were talking about Trey Johnson. Those two guys, I think, are two of the two best scorers, just outright scorers, can go get you a bucket in this draft. The concerns with Ace, because listen, this guy had a wild lead up to the NBA draft where he was declining workouts. He said he wanted to be on the East Coast. He was trying to pick where he was going to go. Didn't quite work out for him. He's in Utah. So there's that. There's a lot of pros and cons with Ace. Like, you watch him on a good day, he's a very as they're showing right now, explosive athlete, can create his own shot. He's got good size. And if you're watching, I think it was the Indiana game. I think he had like close to 40 points. He just couldn't miss, and he had lots of tough twos that he was hitting. The problem with Ace for me is when he takes those tough twos. He'll take them early in the shot clock, and that is
Good.
listen. I understand that he can make those shots, and there's not a lot of people who can make the shots he can, but he's got to learn when to take them and when to just take the good shots that come within the flow, and when it's the time to take those tougher twos.
So with 3 minutes to go until Washington selects, I got another question for you. Given how the NBA Finals wound up being between Indiana and OKC, and yes, small market, but that's not my point here at all. It is the construction of those teams, the depth of those teams, the confidence that players 7, 8, 9, 10. Do you think that changes who someone might select? Obviously not yet, clearly, but in later draft picks, is it someone now starting to construct their team around this new model? Not certain it's here to stay, but this new model of the Indiana Pacers and OKC.
Yeah, I think it is here to stay because I don't see. Now the Pacers, we'll have to see what happens with them with Halliburton's injury, but I don't see OKC going anywhere for the foreseeable future. And the NBA, look, the Warriors were the team to beat for a while. All of a sudden, everybody started shooting 53 pointers a game, right? Whoever is the team to beat, that is the team that the rest of the league looks to copy. So with that in mind, I want to amend something I said about the Sixers picking VJ Edgecombe, which is that he helps right now, and he helps if it doesn't work out with Embiid and George because he makes them a deeper team.
Absolutely. And that's why I thought I wanted to bring I wanted to see what your take was on this, because someone like the Knicks, our Knicks, are they going to look at the starting five and say, we just kind of need some guys to fill some minutes? Or, well, they don't really have much option, and especially given the injuries to Tatum, to Halliburton, and was Mitchell also an Achilles, or who?
Lillard.
Lillard
Yes.
was the third one, but also in the Eastern Conference.
Yes.
So that do the Knicks have to change their team very much at all to adapt to this deeper style, given to what happened to the better teams in the East?
I just think they got to get deeper. And I think they may already have the depth. They just didn't have a coach to play the depth, as we learned as that Pacers series went along. But I want to circle back here because the Wizards are about to make their pick.
Yes, go ahead, Jack.
I think it's down to two guys. Do they want to go with Trey Johnson and get more offense and shooting injected into their team? Or I'm not certain if Alex Sarr is a center or a forward, a power forward. And a lot of that comes down to his jump shot. But if he's more of a power forward, I know I'm much higher on Kama Malawach than a lot of people. I have him third on my board. I'm sticking to it. And I think based off what they're trying to build there with a really good defensive team, especially with what we know with Malawach, where there is the potential for him to develop that three-point shot, I could see them drafting him and being like, we're going to be a big defensive team with lots of length and athleticism and just make things very difficult and you're just not going to want to play against us. And they'll, they won't play. They'll probably stagger Malawach and Sar, see how it works. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But those are the two guys I think. Do they want to go more offensive-minded, Trey Johnson, or more defensive and rebounding with Malawach?
So I don't know about your YouTube TV, but I got a commercial, and when it left, there was 13 seconds left.
Yeah.
So
Picks.
The pick's in.
Pick's in, yeah. The pick is in. I'm like debating. Do I want to see what the pick is? Because I want to make sure I'm not missing any trades here. I think actually Shams is not. He's not spoiling these because I don't see him having posted this yet, as far as I know.
Okay.
The other thing people are saying now, man,
we're back.
Okay. I'm gonna say final answer, Trey Johnson. We're back. We're back in the win column.
5 out of 6. Not bad.
All right. So, we were talking about Trey a little bit earlier. I think Trey Johnson, listen, we love Colin Knippel. I think Trey Johnson is the best shooter in the draft because of his athleticism. Because it allows him to shoot shots that Khan wasn't really comfortable with in terms of his ability to shoot them in motion, running off of screens. I don't think he did enough of that, quite frankly, at Texas. I think his catch and shoot game is something that I really think should become a more featured part of his game. I think it's the best thing he does. And the one knock I had on Trey, where there were times when I would watch him, specifically, I would say the last game he played against Xavier, where his body language when things didn't go his way was really bad. Really bad.
Not quite certain. Did you see?
Yeah, I'm looking
his
at
pants.
That. Yeah. Well, the pants sock combination. Listen, he is different. He is different.
That was.
Man, the other thing I'll say, I think because of my concerns, I think he's going to a great spot. Because of my concerns, he's going to a great spot for one reason and one reason only. I think the Wizards have taken a page from what the Rockets did, and they're surrounding their young players with veterans. So they already had Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton. Two guys who will, especially Marcus Smart, who if you're showing a little bit of bad body language to your teammates, he won't pull you aside. He will just tell you, you've got to, fix what you're doing. And then they just added CJ McCollum. So I don't think those three guys are going to be around all year. They'll probably be gone by the trade deadline. But they're great guys to learn from. And I think it's a very smart move by their GM.
You've been on this narrative for a while that every time that I brought up, I'd hate to see Cooper banished to Washington. You said, no, they are not the same Washington, that you've had this feeling that they have finally got the management side together. Tell us a little bit about why you think that's the case.
I just think, I just talked about the three veterans. That's the important part. And I think it's been, I think, like 2 years now since who is their GM? Let me look it up real quick. Since he was brought in. And Will Dawkins is a very young guy. And he's brought in 2023. They've just done, I've just liked their picks. They had Bilal Koulibaly, who played with Wembenyama in France, was their first pick. He looks like a really good young wing defender. I liked who they got last year with Bub Carrington, and especially for me personally, Keyshawn George, who I think is a really good player who left college probably a year early, but he ended up as a first-round pick, so you can't blame him. And I just think they're doing a really good. Now they get Trey Johnson. Like, they're bit by bit developing a really nice young nucleus. And the goal for them is not to just make the playoffs, but to be a contender. And I think that's a very important distinction, where you see certain teams, it seems like the goal is actually just make the playoffs. And that depends on
Well,
the owner.
and for the Eastern Conference, the 3 Achilles injuries, I mean, let's face it, Boston just blew up their roster with the trades they made, which they had to do to get under to get below the second apron. And so they're and it's not likely to see Tatum maybe by the playoffs, or they're just not going to do it, and they'll warehouse him for a year to make certain that he's healthy. Achilles, when you blow out your Achilles, it is brutal.
That's a year. That's a year injury. The Pelicans, their pick is in. There's a lot of different
Who do you
directions
got?
they can go. I didn't love their trade. They were on the other side of that CJ McCollum trade. I think it's got to be a big. I would think, for me, I would take Malawach. But the last thing I heard from them was they were interested in Derek Queen. And so that's who I think they're going to go for here. But they're in a weird spot with their roster, quite frankly.
Yeah.
DeJounte Murray, another guy coming back from an Achilles injury. They added Jordan Poole. As much as we love Zion, we don't know how many games he's going to play. Trey Murphy, I think, is a good player. Herb Jones is coming back from injury. I like Yves Missi. He's their young center, their first-round pick from last year. I just think there's a lot of different directions they can go. And this is the first pick for Joe Dumars. So I think that will tell us a bit about where he thinks this roster is, depending on who he selects here, because there's a lot of pieces, but they don't seem to fit great together yet. There is a world where they do. Where you've got Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion,
All right,
Macy,
Jack.
Queen. That's
Here
my
we go.
final prediction. Jeremiah Fears. Okay. This is the first one. First one that just surprised me.
Where did you have Jeremiah on your big board?
Jeremiah, I had 13.
Okay.
13.
So why do you think they went this direction?
Well, I think part of it is they don't know exactly when they'll get DeJounte Murray back. And they don't know how he'll come back coming off the Achilles. I think that's got to be part of it. For me, Fears, look, he had some really good moments, especially towards the end of last season. He played well, I thought, in non-conference play. Had a little bit of difficulty in conference play. He's one of the younger players in this year's draft, just a little bit older than Cooper by about a month or two. He is similar to Cooper, reclassified. He's 6'3", 180 pounds, 6'5", 6'6" wingspan. The thing for me with Fears, he was not a good shooter. I think he shot 27% from three. But his free throw percentage was excellent. So I think there's a world where he improves there for sure. He's a good passer. He can get his team involved, his teammates involved. But at the same time, I think he's like a good athlete, but he's not a John Wall, Russell Westbrook type explosive, driver. So he's gonna have to improve in some of the in between areas of his game, and I think Fears really the reason why I'm a little concerned for this pick is depending on which direction this team is looking to go. I think Fears needed to go to a team like who's picking now, the Brooklyn Nets, to have the opportunity to make a bunch of mistakes because he's really young and he needs time to develop in those reps. And I worry with the Pelicans, it's hard for me to see him getting those opportunities, those same opportunities that I think he could have at a team like the Nets.
And speaking of the Nets, here's the first of their picks. What do you think you'd be looking for given the number of picks? So we have no assumption. So far, they're 8, 19, 26, 27, and 36. And it's kind of hard to know whether they're going to package anything, but they're clearly going to use the number 8 pick to draft some piece. I don't know that they're, even with all the injuries in the East, I don't know that they can get this team to even a play-in level yet.
They're far away. I mean, they're not actually far away because they've got D'Angelo Russell, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton. Those are good players. Not good. They're solid players. Let me take it down a notch. But they are clearly rebuilding. To me, this pick, if I were the Nets, it's Malawach. He's the highest upside guy for me. I'm not as high on Colin Murray Boyles. We'll get to that when he's picked, as a lot of other people. I just think Malawach, his skill set and his upside just fit with where the NBA is going. And then I think they could keep Claxton. It opens the door even more so. It really doesn't matter. But I think Claxton is certainly on the block this summer. A team like the Lakers would love to get Claxton for sure. And you start your rebuild with a 7'1" center who has the potential to really be something special, in my opinion, with Malawach. Other candidates, this is a weird spot in the draft for me. Yes, other people would say Colin Murray Boyles. You could certainly, talk about a Derek Queen, a Kasparas Yakuchonis, Noah Senge. There's they need players. The Nets need players. So there's a lot of different directions. But I will say this. One team that really hopes that they're all very excited over there, that they do not select Kamau Malawach is the Raptors, who've been targeting him and just rumored to be very interested in Malawach for a long time now. So it'd be very interesting if the Nets do not select him. If the Raptors, have that opportunity, what will they do? But the Nets,
right? Because they pick after the Nets. So
yeah.
Well, there have been drafts where we sort of the first player, and then there was a lot of foreign players, and it was hard to keep interest for myself, being such a USA college basketball fan. This is a different draft in that these are players coming from the NCAA and players that we've had a chance to watch. I know you are far better than me in scouting overseas. So when we get to some of those players, it'll be very interesting to get your take on it. But so far, it's like I kind of know most of these guys.
Well, and part of that, a couple of the guys who are going to go in the first round here, Kasparas Yakuchonis, and Yegor Demin, those were guys who in years past would have been playing overseas.
Right.
And so that changed, with NIL. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. As you just said, was it last year? I guess the last couple of drafts, it was all about France. All the French players.
And what did I notice? They had at least 2 or 3 in the green room today.
Noah
So there's more to
Senge.
come.
I'm still really high on Nolan Traore, who a lot of people kind of soured on, but I still think could be very, very good.
All right, Jack, you'll have to explain this one to me.
Yegor Demin. Okay, this makes sense in the sense that they have a blank canvas to work on here for Demin. And this is a guy who, at the start of the year, first handful of games, I have him 19 on my board, so I do think it's a little bit of a reach. But here's what I will say: the start of the year, he was playing against, I don't know, Northwest, Colorado State, those kind of teams. And you watch him and you say, this guy, and this I still think is true, the best passer in the draft.
Whoa. Really?
The best passer. And here's why. Here's why I say that. Yegor Demin has the ability, almost like a quarterback, he can throw to the open spot. He'll make the pass to the open spot. He's like 2 steps ahead with the way he sees the floor. And he's 6'9". He can see over, the defense. But that's the skill that's most impressive is the passing. And now the jumper, go ahead.
I was just saying, I was watching the highlights. 3 of them were passes.
Yeah. And the thing with him is the 3-point shot, he didn't shoot great. Like, I think it was high 20s, his percentage. But the form looked good, and he made some big ones, specifically in the NCAA tournament game against Wisconsin. So, and look, BYU, they're going to have at least one more guy in the top 10, probably the top 3 next year with AJ Debonsa. So this BYU player selected in the top 10, I think is just going to continue to grow. They've got a lot of money over there, and that matters in the modern college basketball landscape. So,
Hey, Jack, since there's so many net players that are coming, with draft picks, and this is in the Barclays Center, the draft.
yes.
Do they just sort of take them and put them right in the locker room? But they still have to make the team. I know there's summer league and all of that to watch this. But it was funny. They showed one fan stand up, and I couldn't hear, but it looked like he had a Brooklyn Nets shirt on, and what he said was, "Who's that?" And so if you don't really follow, that's one of the things that I've been really impressed by the research you've been doing all year, is that if you don't follow a lot of these players, you don't understand why a team would pick them.
There's Corey Alexander, Seth Greenberg, PJ Carlissimo. Go ahead, keep going.
You may not understand why you would pick them, especially like last year when all these players were, I think last year or the year before, when all these players were coming in from France. And I was like, what? Who?
I think it's the last 2 years. I think both years you're correct.
Well, and you were saying to me that it's not going to take long for France to contend for the gold medal with the United States.
And it took way less time than I thought. They almost They almost won the gold medal last summer. they, they
Thanks to Steph Curry's magic, but
man. And listening to, all right, I'm just gonna say this quickly. I think the Raptors are gonna pick Kama Malwatch. I'd be a little bit surprised if they did not. But I was listening to Batum talk about, what was going on, during that, because he in that iconic shot that Curry hits over the two French defenders. One of those was Batum, and Batum was basically saying like, "What are you supposed to do?" You know, and he was like, "Listen, I was I was upset about it, but I had to respect it, right? Like it's one of it was amazing, but I was playing against him, so I couldn't be happy for him. So, yeah, I think the Raptors, Kama Malawach, long-term center for the future. They've got Jakob Pertl, so he doesn't need to play right away. There is Josh Hairston, his agent. Josh Hairston played at Duke. You remember Mr. Hairston? He was on those teams with Tyler Thornton, who's come back. They were good friends. Who's now an assistant coach for Duke. He didn't play a ton of minutes, in fairness, but he was on those teams. He's now an agent.
good spot.
Oh no, yeah, and I think that was who is that? Yeah, he's with Clutch. So I think who's the owner of Clutch? Is it Paul? Yeah, Rich Paul. So that was Rich Paul, who's the head, LeBron's old friend, and then Josh Hairston is one of the agents there. So
So with
connection.
they just flashed Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, and
Brandon
and
Ingram.
Brandon Ingram. What a great place for Kaman Malawach to go to be the
And
big guy.
Emmanuel Quickly. They've got a real talk about. I'm glad you're going there because look with. Oh, she's crying. With the vacuum in the East, this could be a team that becomes a playoff team. The Raptors. Maybe it's
Absolutely.
Boyles. They're showing him a lot here.
And they're going back and forth, back and forth.
Back and forth. They're creating the drama.
They are.
I think Boyles would be a little bit weird to me because they've got a lot of 6'6", 6'8" guys, but they do seem to like that position or that size, I should say. Masai Ujiri. So.
All right, Jack. Let's see if you got your mojo back here.
What? How many did I get right so far? 5? I think that's right.
No.
Who is it? It is Colin Boyles.
Right. I'm ahead of you, so I didn't want to say anything.
No, you can spoil it. That's fine. Wow.
I almost look. I can't feel too bad for our guy Mal, but I just see a couple of places where he could have. This one, completely agree with you on how he could have transformed the team. But this is one, Jack, listening to your analysis where I wonder if the finals played a role in this too. That you're looking for depth now, you're looking for a longer bench, and but on a team that really does. Well, you said they do have a center, so
yeah, but they don't have much depth behind him. I also think this could open up the door for them to trade one of those guys, RJ Ingram. I doubt it would be Scotty Barnes, but I think that this opens the door for that a bit. I think Murray Boyles is a good player. Some people compared him to Julius Randle. I was definitely lower on him, probably too low. In fairness, I had him at 27. That was probably too low. He probably should have been, for me, around the upper teens or 20. But I think I just think he does a lot of things really well. He's a good rebounder. He can defend. He can he can certainly score inside. I'm just worried about the fact that he is 6'7". He's not a center, and he's not a shooter at all.
Well,
And with the way the NBA is played nowadays, that to me, the rest of his game, if he was an just a below average shooter, I would have had him probably 10. But he's just not a shooter. So that just gave me a lot of concern, quite frankly. And if I had some now, here's something else I want to admit about Murray Boyles, and I want to do this more often, and I'll try to do it more often as we go. I only watched probably like 2 games of Murray Boyles. I didn't get to watch a ton of him at South Carolina, who was the worst team in the SEC. And I think that played a factor in where I had him ranked here. But man, it's interesting that Malawach still hasn't been picked to me.
so does Houston, who's on the clock, need a center? I mean, they're a fascinating team with having gotten Durant. Do they need a center?
Man. Well, this pick is going to Phoenix, first of all. So this pick is part of the trade going to the Suns. I mean, yeah, the Suns could use a big man, especially a big man for the future. They got Nick Richards, who's a solid big man, but
Solid big man.
I am surprised. I am surprised that Malawach is still available because I just think similar to, and we'll talk about some of these other guys who are 3-and-D type wings. I just think it's hard to get that skill set in the NBA. And so it's hard to find a guy who's 7'1" that has the potential to shoot threes and defend the rim. So I'm just a little surprised he's still available right here.
Well, one of the things about him that we noticed was he had the capacity to shoot a three, but he didn't
True.
take, I mean, very, very few. And so if you're hoping that your big guy can also shoot threes, then you're going all in with Mal being a rim protector. Great footwork, as we know, amazing footwork, the ability to play defense on a smaller man. Well, let's see what happens here. So it's the Suns that are picking.
Man, for the Suns, well, number one, I'll tell you what they don't need: a shooting guard. So I think we can take Jace Richardson off the board here. I don't think he makes any sense. But outside of that, there's a lot of guys here on my board that could make sense. We've talked about Malawach. If they want to get an offensive big, they could go for Derek Queen. It's hard for me. Look, I feel very happy I got 5 right, 5 of the first 6. If I get another one, I'll be ecstatic. But as we go on, it gets a little bit more difficult.
Really difficult.
And especially with where Phoenix is at, like, what are they even trying to accomplish next season? Hard to know. So I could see, we've talked about Malawach, we've talked about Queen. Asenge could make sense. The versatile French forward who's 6'9", 6'10". They could use some more size and versatility in the front court. And I could also see them going with a local product and picking Carter Bryant, who averaged, I think, like 6 or 7 points and 4 rebounds for Arizona. But I think showcased a real solid 3-and-D skill set that I just think is hard to find in the NBA. And I think comes at a premium. So I could see him being drafted early. And for those people who like the draft, I'll make a cross draft comparison here. In the way that quarterbacks are drafted early in the NFL, number one options are drafted early in the NBA. Guys who we think, could be a number one option, right? And on the
All
flip
right.
side,
Here comes the commissioner. Here comes the commissioner. Who,
right. Who is it?
Smell.
Finally. Finally.
I mean, not too shabby for a kid from South Sudan going number 10 in the NBA. If you remember, there was the news before, I think you filled me in on this, that the day of the Houston game in the Final Four, he found out that he may not be able to travel back to South Sudan.
Oh, is that Rachel?
And
I think that was Rachel Baker. It looked like her from the side there. Yeah, well, I think that could be part of the reason he's very emotional right now. Not only that, but there was talk that he may be deported.
although I believe, who knows, things change a lot. I think if he was here to play a profession, he won't, I think he's okay.
Yeah, that was the last thing I saw as well, but.
And he's absolutely crying up a storm. It is completely emotional. The story of this kid is phenomenal.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So this is a guy who didn't start playing basketball until he was 14 years old. Who was playing on outdoor courts because they didn't have indoor courts for a long period of time. And
Jack, they're going to show some of it right now. So why don't you narrate along with it?
All right, I'm a little bit behind.
Yep.
So yeah, he grew up in Uganda, or born in South Sudan, grew up in Uganda, as they're saying. Started playing at 13. And he's he was the youngest player to go into the NBA, like Africa Academy that they had over there. And the thing about, we're going to show, his ability to block shots. I'm sure they'll show some of the rebounding. They'll show his ability for alley-oops. But the thing that I want to talk about that you won't see is Kama Malwatch the person. We just saw, he was emotional. And the thing that we got to see as fans of Duke is his story throughout the year. And everyone to a man, from not just the players, but the coaching staff, would talk about how great of a person Malawach is. And how just grateful he was to just be at Duke and be a part of the program and be with his guys. And so that's the person that the Suns are getting. And I just think this guy's potential, there's a reason I had him third on my big board. It's because I think he's got the third highest, maybe the second highest, quite frankly, upside in this class because of his ability. Let's listen to Malawach a little bit here.
My dreams, believing in myself that I'm going to make it to the NBA one day, and now I'm here in the NBA draft. Just got there. We also talked about the pride and all the folks that you have represented. What do you want to say about the people that have helped to get you? And in particular, man, I was here representing the whole continent, living out the God had the whole continent in my back, giving hopes to young kids, inspiring young kids, the next generation of African basketball. So your man, Malik Elaine, what would you say to them? Like they're watching that. What else is where they watch? I mean, I want to thank them so much for raising me the way they raised me, for making me such a good young man and raising me the way that should have made the qualities of life. There's such a
Wait,
joy about you.
wait
Well,
a
thank you for
second.
sharing that. And congratulations. Thank you so much.
I am absolutely confused. We just have a trade.
This is an emotional
So
moment with the
I
mom's family. Considering everything this
I
family
don't
has
think
been through,
Malawach is gonna stay in
to get here.
Phoenix. Something weird's going on
The
here.
siblings all sharing in this with
Yeah,
him.
you gotta
Again,
turn off the
we heard
sound
it
for us,
from
JD. You gotta turn off
that's
the sound.
back to his parents.
Something is
Go ahead,
happening here.
Jack.
We've got
Go
breaking
ahead.
news. So the Suns are trading for Mark Williams.
What?
Right.
All right, that makes no sense.
I sort of understand it. I think I gotta look up Nick Richards' contract. If Nick Richards is going to be a free agent, I can kind of understand this. But
So then why did they pick Malawach?
he is also still under contract. I am totally confused. They apparently decided 5 shooting guards wasn't enough. They're going to go get 5 centers. And they're only going to have shooting guards and centers on their team. And they have the former Charlotte Hornets centers plus Kaman Malawach now.
Wait. So Jack, it was a trade. So
Yes,
what did it say? So what was the other part of it?
The Hornets get the 29th pick in this year's draft, along with a 2029 first rounder.
So they didn't
They didn't give a player.
they didn't give up a player.
Oh wait, let's listen to Shams. Let me listen to Shams. Portland is in. This is my friend Josh's team. Oh. Oh. Okay. That's just part of the Durant trade. Wow. Holy.
My guy, I wanted him at Duke.
He went from Division III to Eastern Washington State for 7 games, commits to Duke, doesn't go to Duke, ends up as the number 11 pick. What a story. These are the 2 best stories of the draft. I gotta tell you that right now. Malawach and Coward. I just think these are 2 of the best stories. I think, man, now, the 11th pick, listen, I just couldn't get myself to put him this high. I think I had him closer to 30. I am 32. I think that was probably too low, but I could only watch highlights. I couldn't get a full game of him at Washington State, so it was hard for me to move him up really high. But the interviews I saw of him were awesome. This is a very mature young man, I guess I can say that. And he's got great size. He's got versatility. He's a good 3-and-D defensive type player. I'm surprised he went this early. Man.
Well, and my sadness will be almost had him for a year at Duke.
Well, I think the worst thing that happened was he committed to Duke, and then everyone was like, "Well, who's this guy?"
All right. I got to take a break. I'll be right back.
All right, all right. JD will be back. So listen, the on the let's talk about Trailblazers for a second, because I gotta go back and amend something I said. I had a breakdown of the Drew Holiday trade, and upon further thought, they should have been the team getting picks, not sending picks for Simons. I just think that was not. The more I think about Drew, I love Drew, but he did show some signs of decline last year. So I just think that wasn't great, but I think this is a good pickup. This is a good pickup for them. A little earlier than I thought, but he adds to what they're clearly building with Portland, a really good defensive team, switchable defenders, another piece to that puzzle. So, yeah, I mean, right now, let's look at the big board here. Will Keyshawn Gilbert be drafted, says Jeffrey Dahmer. Maybe tomorrow. But I don't know. I like Keyshawn Gilbert, but I see him as a guy who's probably got to get a two-way deal as an undrafted guy, and work his way into the NBA like that way. I think that's going to be the path for Keyshawn. So there's some interesting guys still left on my big board here. We've got the Bulls selecting. I think if I'm the Bulls, there's two guys that I think make sense here. Derek Queen, because they need a long-term replacement for Vucevic, or Carter Bryant, who I do think profiles as a really nice 3-and-D guy. Actually, the third one would be Noah Senge, because they could really use some size at that forward spot. I just pair him with Matas Buzelis. You've got a couple of nice young forwards, 6'9". You could start to see a little nucleus building there for the Bulls. But we gotta see what they're gonna end up doing, because I just like what they're gonna do in free agency with Josh Giddey. Are they gonna keep him? Are they not gonna keep him? So, man, there's a lot of different interesting angles. I'm still surprised Malawach slid as far as he did in the draft. Apparently the Suns were as well. Because I just wonder though, like, you've got you just traded 2 first-rounders for Mark Williams. You draft Malawach with your first. Now you need a power forward there, and you may have something, unless the plan is to start Brooks at that 4 spot. He's a little undersized, but I think he can get away with it. And then you've got, I guess you put in the 3 other guards, Beal, Green, and Booker. And then you've got 2 7-footers you rotate. I guess that could work. I don't see them going particularly far. But yeah, all right, let's see who the Bulls end up picking here. They're a team, guys, this team has been in the 9-10 of the Eastern Conference play-in the last 3 years. Like, they've got to pick a direction, most importantly. It's just a tough place to be as a fan. If I was a fan of the Bulls, I would be very frustrated. So, man, we've got a few other guys like Walter Clayton. I don't think he goes here at all. I don't see the fit. But starting with 13 with Atlanta, I could start seeing Walter Clayton going. if you're watching live, drop in the chat. You know, any questions you got. Like this video, it really helps us attract a little bit more viewers. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching with us. It's awesome. I appreciate all the support we've been getting here. It's been a lot of fun. I'm gonna keep building, and next year just gonna build it, and do the draft even better. So, wow. Okay, we've got a trade to announce. So Cedric Coward is not going. Great trade. Great trade by Portland, in my opinion. He is not going to the Trailblazers, but rather he's been rerouted to the Memphis Grizzlies for pick 16, a 2028 first, and 2 seconds. So some of that haul that Memphis got for Desmond Bane, they put in clearly to Cedric Coward. That's an interesting move. That's a very interesting move. I'm not sure. That's a lot of draft capital to give up here for Cedric Coward. Typically, in the draft, you want more selections. And it tends to be a lot of times when teams trade up, it doesn't particularly work out. But I hope it does. For them, I love Coward's story. Here we go. The Bulls. Who are they picking? Noah Senge. So, listen, Noah. Gosh. Noah, he's a guy who I felt like had really good feel for the game. And I think, honestly, that's something where sometimes I feel like people underestimate. Because they'll say something along the lines of like, yeah, he gets his buckets through the flow of the game, but he's not going to be able to do that in the NBA. We just watched throughout the playoffs Obi Toppin be a menace off the bench for the Indiana Pacers with his ability to score with feel. And I think now Noah, they're very different players. But what I'm getting at with that is that I don't think it's a knock. I think it's a positive. I think this guy's a really good interior finisher. He moves. He's a really mobile, fluid athlete. He's just a guy who, when you put on the tape, you watch his full games, he just looks the part of an NBA player. I think it's a good pick by Chicago, who, honestly, a little bit surprised that he was still on the board here for them to take him at this spot. But, yeah, that's the draft. Let me see what my notes are on Noah. He averaged 12 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals, 24 minutes. For Ratio Farm who have another player in Ben Saraf. Hold on, we've got Shams. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. It looks like now we're going to get Derek Queen. Off the board at 13. They're giving up 2 firsts. I mean, 1 first, really, right? They're trading up from 23. It's going to be the most favorable of their pick and Milwaukee's pick. An interesting draft for the Pelicans here, getting Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears, who I thought they could have picked Derek Queen at pick 7 when they initially picked Fears. So I just think that they've given up some capital here to get Queen. They must have really liked him. I like Derek Queen. Derek Queen's a really good offensive player. I'm not sure if he's a 5 or a 4. He's a little bit. I know people, there's that thing that's been going around where if he was European and his name had an itch in it, his last name had an itch in it, he would have been drafted higher. But I think more than anything, he's just a little bit undersized for the 5 spot. And I do think he can play as a 4 because I think the shot will work out. But it is a low arcing shot from Queen. Yeah, we got to see. It feels to me like new GM, new direction. I wonder, what's going to happen with some of these guys. Immediately, he trades CJ McCollum for Jordan Poole. You've got his guys coming in now, right? Dumars' guys. You've got Poole. You've got Queen. You've got Fears. What does this mean for the future, of guys like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Zion, even Yves Missi, right? Like, where do those guys fit in? Are they available now? Because Dumars is trying to recreate this team in his own image and in what he's looking for, the style of the team. So
Under contract?
you're back.
Didn't he sign a long-term deal? So he's under contract for a while.
Who?
Zion.
Well, yes, he is. He's got like a non-guaranteed deal, so he is under contract for a while. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit confused with these picks. Also, I don't know if you caught this, JD. I'm not sure quite when you came back, but Cedric Howard was traded.
I know. It was a funny thing. I couldn't talk to you, but wearing the headphones, I was able to walk 25 feet away and listen to you.
Oh, well, that counts.
So I heard about Cedric Howard. What did you think of it?
I thought it was quite a lot. They gave up a first and 2 seconds to move up 5 spots. And in the history of the draft, it typically is typically doesn't work out. Yeah, I was going to tell you to do that. You've got the sun behind you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So, yeah, I mean, it felt like a lot. They used some of the capital they acquired in the Desmond Bane trade to go get a rookie, which seems a little counterintuitive. But Cedric Howard is an older guy, so, he should be able to play right away. Man, all right.
So is this Atlanta?
So this, was Atlanta, but it was traded to New Orleans.
Okay.
New Orleans gets, I think it was like pick 23 or something like that, if I remember correctly.
So when Derek goes up there, which cap does he put on?
He puts on the Atlanta hat because it's technically not official yet.
Okay.
It's one of those weird things that the NBA does. For some reason, though, I thought the Nets had gotten that pick. The Nets get pick 22, was it? What was that Porzingis trade? It was 22. Okay. That makes way more sense.
Now Porzingis is with Atlanta?
Yeah, Porzingis got traded to Atlanta. Listen, Porzingis, whatever happened to him, whatever illness he had, he really did not look like himself. Especially that series against the Knicks. So unless they can get him healthy, I don't know how much that really matters. And we're on to the last pick of the lottery here, JD. So the Spurs almost they've bookended almost the lottery with number 2 pick, number 14 pick. There's not a ton of needs for the Spurs, I will say. I think they could probably use some shooting.
But who ran the offense for him last year?
The Spurs?
Well,
it was Chris
wasn't
Paul.
it Chris Paul?
And then they traded for De'Aaron Fox.
So they don't need another.
And they just
guard.
drafted Dylan Harper, who's also
Right.
a point guard.
Okay.
They've got enough. They're covered there. Oh, and by the way, they have Stephon Castle, who is a combo guard, who's also very good. The problem is Castle, Harper, Fox, no one's a good three-point shooter there. Derek Queen, by the way, famously, everyone knows at this point, said that Maryland game, he said, "Give me the ball." But there was a word in between. So, seems like a nice young kid, but maybe not, I don't know. It's very interesting. We've had two of the 4 Montverde players who are expected to go in the first round here today have been selected now with Cooper and Queen. We've still got Asa Newell and Liam McNeely to go.
Okay, to extend the depth of San Antonio, what's your best thought there?
I think they could go a couple of directions. I know some people have talked about Joan Berenger here, who is a rim running, shot blocking type center. Close to 7-footer, good depth behind Wembanyama. I could also see Carter Bryant being selected here as a 3-and-D wing. Wow.
Well, then you'd
be correct.
You'd be correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it made a lot of sense to me. By the way, Carter Bryant, we've had a lot of interesting outfits tonight. Carter Bryant, first guy not wearing a shirt. There's that. He's just got on a blazer.
So how would you rate San Antonio's draft?
I would, let's give him a letter grade. I'd give him an A. I really like Carter Bryant.
Jack, who coaches them now?
I forget his name. He took over last year after Pop got sick. And now he's full-time.
And then Pop is still associated with the team, I think.
Yes, he's part of the front office. I just think this is a great pick because he's a young guy. I think he can develop. They've got Harrison Barnes still, but he, over time he can take over for him. I think this was a very good pickup for the Spurs. A guy now. I gotta be careful with how I say this. I thought he did a very commendable job guarding Cooper Flagg in the matchups with Arizona. At the same time, Cooper Flagg in the game against Arizona had close to 30 points, and not all of that was matched up with Bryant. And I think athletically, he's one of the few guys who can match him. And I think ultimately, he was younger, so he didn't have the strength advantage that some of the guys who did well against Coop had. But he's got the tools. He's got the tools. He's got very similar measurements to like an OG Anunoby. Um, he's got a good 3-point shot. He has potential for more offensively. He's a guy who can block shots, generate steals, and he's one of those guys, a 3-and-D guy who I think, there's a premium to go get a guy who can be one of those 6'6", 6'8" wings who can guard on one end and knock down threes and do a little bit more on the other. So that is a recap. That's the end of the lottery here.
Right. So, and who starts off at number 15? It's unbelievable. It's like between Philadelphia, Dallas. Yes, the other teams got their picks, but I mean, the team that least needs the 15th pick.
Well, even more so, it's like I forgot. I completely forgot that they're picking this early, and because I think it's like they just won the title. It was just literally 3 days ago, and the team that wins the title, they picked 30th. Everyone knows that, but they're different. They're just different, and they've acquired everybody's first-round pick for the next 10 years. And listen, I'm not even going to bother trying to figure out who they're going to pick here because there's just so many directions they can go. But with that being said, I am going to throw out a name because I think I have to. That's the purpose of the program here. Whew. I am going to go with Rasheer Fleming from St. Joseph's. I'm a little bit lower on him than other people, but similar to Colin Murray-Boyles, it had a lot more to do with the fact I couldn't find game footage on him. I didn't watch him live during the season. He played at St. Joseph's. 6'8", junior, 21 years old, 7'5" wingspan, shot the three well, around 40%. The one thing I think OKC, it sounds a little bit strange because they won the title, but the one thing that they probably could use is they've got a ton of guys who are 6'5", 6'6", and then they've got Jalen Williams, who they could move on from. Not Jalen Williams, the star, but the Jalen Williams, the big man from Arkansas, who's 6'9". Hartenstein, who's 6'11", 7 foot, and Holmgren, who's 7'11". There's a little bit of a gap between their 6'6" guys and the bigs. And so if they can get a forward who's 6'8", 6'9", they do have Ousmane Dieng, who I think could maybe get some playing time next year. But that's the spot. Like Siakam gave them some issues because they didn't have anybody. Siakam gave a lot of people issues, but there was nobody size-wise who could really match up with him. So I think that could be a direction they look to supplement here.
So I'm going to throw a name out because I don't. Obviously, winning the championship, you have the luxury of saying, "Well, we just won." So. For March Madness, Walter Clayton.
Oh, yeah.
And that the will to win, throw him in, if he's willing to come off the bench and not be the guy and fit in with everybody. So I wonder if he worked out with them or if he talked to them. So
no, listen, Walter's a guy who I think any of these picks should be selected. I have him 17th on my board. So any of these picks, he would make a lot of sense. I don't think the Thunder are going to be the team to take him. But what I will say, the next pick, it says Memphis, but it's Portland. They just traded their best scoring guard for Drew Holiday in Anthony Simons. I think Walter Clayton could do a lot of the stuff that Anthony Simons did.
That's a good point. That's a good destination for him.
So I think that could make some sense. I don't see, like, Minnesota. as a great landing spot. Even though Mike Conley's getting older, they have young guards that they want to get some more playing time. They also have Dante DiVincenzo. They just drafted last year Rob Dillingham, so I don't think that's going to be a great landing spot for Walter. But how it's just hard for me to see him not being at least like a rotation player in the NBA. That guy, and I think the misconception is that he just did it in March Madness. He did it
Right.
like most of the year for Florida, if not all of the year. And he did it in the most difficult conference in college basketball.
Well,
And yeah.
for the team that has everything,
And by the way, they get their their lottery pick from last year back for this year. Thomas Sorber. Well, this makes sense. So, okay. Around the... Well, all right. First off, I don't think you could be any happier if you're Thomas Sorber. You get to go to the defending champions at pick 15. So you get paid well, and you go to a great team. Now, your playing time, that's up in the air. How much will he actually play? But, man, Sorber, first off, his coach, Coach Cooley at Georgetown, loved this guy. Loved him. And he averaged like 15, 16 points, 9 rebounds, over a couple assists, couple of blocks, over a steal. He's got a really good feel around the basket, angles, understanding, timing. He can really. There's his coach hugging him right there, and yeah, this is a good pick for the Thunder, who I think are going to lose their big man Jalen Williams, and this is why they got all those picks, so they can start to cycle through their contracts, and so they don't. Because, look, they're going to have to pay Holmgren and the other Jalen Williams this summer, most likely. And so some of these other supplemental guys are not going to be able to keep. And so that's why they need these draft picks to hit. And I think Sorber has got a lot of potential to hit. He's going to spend certainly some time in the G League. But size, I thought they would go more for power forward. They end up going for another center. And I don't even know if it's really like another center because Holmgren plays both at the 4 and the 5. So
right. And they list him at 6'9.5".
yeah, so with shoes,
Not
6'10", 6'11".
okay.
But he's 250 or 260. He's
Huge.
yeah. And at one point earlier, not actually too early, but probably like 15 games into the college season, the only other freshman in the country who was putting up the same or similar, the same stats across categories as Sorber was Cooper Flag. Now, Sorber was doing it against lesser competition, but to be in the conversation with Cooper Flag, it's pretty good. And last point on Sorber, we talked about Con Knipple as a guy who's not projected as a one and done. Con was like a top 20 recruit. Sorber was like in the 50s. So quite a year for Thomas Sorber. And I think, something I should say is
another great draft story. He was like number 50, plays at Georgetown. Oh, it's our man.
By the way, sporting, he's got the mustache goatee, look. He looks older.
I think they tried to, maybe that's the look he was going for.
He looks like 3 years older with his facial hair.
And a tie.
Yeah.
And you know that what they choose to come out and project during draft night is thought about by agents, thought about by family, thought about by others. So, mom and pop flag didn't say you got to shave.
By the way, can we talk about these hats? I could they have put in a little more effort? Like they're like wrinkly. They look like there wasn't much, not a lot of creativity in the design.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it was a blur. As soon as I heard it happen, it been a blur. So, trying my best. I don't know. How long it was appreciated, but I definitely feel it's social work. We might see a time. Real time. Take a look. Oh, man. Why is it so long? Thank you. Thank you.
That mic'd up.
It's gonna be mic'd up a lot moving forward.
What did he say about the watch, Jack?
I didn't catch it.
Neither did I.
I think everybody deals with it differently. I think my way that I deal with pressure and I deal with expectations is using people around me. Using my parents, using my brothers, using my friends. Been with me every step of the way. That's my job. That's how I deal with things like that. So it's something free and deal with things like that. It's definitely not easy, but it's something you got to deal with. All season long, you can have the game in so many different ways. Story, what's your favorite part of the game? I think honestly my favorite part of the game is doing everything. Just having that ability.
I knew that'd be his answer.
We've seen too much of him.
We have, and I think that, but I think that's the right answer, having watched him, having not missed a minute of him, in that he is the guy. This is why it's going to be very interesting to see how the public reacts to him, because he's the guy that will go and do whatever is needed to be done. And it's why some people are saying he's not the guy that can create his own shot enough to be one of the great ones. And I said, what's with the watch? But that he'll, the fact that he could do virtually anything, it may come out in the game that what Cooper Flagg's line is, 10 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists,
couple of blocks,
and we know that that's what he could do to control a game. There really isn't I don't know if there's really a comparison.
Wow.
I mean, I know
Hansen Young. This guy went way higher than I think people thought he was going to go. Way higher. Now, where did I have him? I had him 42. Oh, boy. Now, I will say, very important, this guy played in China. The only time I saw him play was during the NBA Combine, where I thought he did look good. I do. I really do. It was just hard for me to put him. Oh, there's Walter Clayton. It's just hard for me to
Yeah.
put him up really high because I just couldn't watch a lot of his games. And for me, I got to feel comfortable with the player to put him up higher. So, what I will say, the limited sample I did see of him, I think he's like a legit 7 footer. He's a guy who showed off some good passing ability, playing out of like that high post, more like 3 point line area, and the ability to knock down with three. He's a little bit slow footed. You're probably gonna need to play him in drop coverage, but it's interesting to me that Portland now in back-to-back drafts has taken a center, and not a center, not a guy you could, either one you could play at power forward. So that is a little bit. There's his passing, a little bit of question, but different skill sets. I think Yang is more offensive minded, more of a passer. Donovan Klingon's more of your traditional rim protector type center. So I could see how this works in terms of your center platoon because it's become a position where you need two guys for the most part in the NBA. So I need to get some water. I'll be right back.
All right then. I got the helm. And the first thing that I'm thinking is if we're going to look at the championship Thunder and think about their depth, but clearly when they would play Hartenstein along with Chet Holmgren, they're playing two bigs along with that depth. And is that part of the model that you need size up front with a very deep bench? So,
yeah, I mean, that's part of it.
I mean, you can't rule that out as part of what made them great was that they had two big guys. Yes, Chet could went out and hit outside shots, but there were games when he put up like 6 block shots. So he clearly is relied on as a rim protector, and us Knick fans know Hartenstein as being sorry about the light. We know Hartenstein, and he certainly played that way for the Thunder. Is someone who can not afraid to mix it up,
Right. So now we've got Timberwolves. They're one of the teams that started playing two bigs, with Cat and Gobert until they traded Cat. They've got new owners now. A-Rod. The hated Alex Rodriguez. You got to get that out there. And they've got an interesting summer ahead of them. I wonder where they're going here. Where are they going, JD? Who'd they take?
Beringer.
No, you're right. You're right the first time. Beringer. Joan Beringer. 6'11", French big man. They have one of those guys. There's a 7-footer, Rudy Gobert. I think Beringer, it's very funny. He played soccer as a kid. Similar to what I would say about Malawach. He's got very good feet. He's a very fluid mover. And I think he can guard on the perimeter. I think his passing's a little bit underrated. Statistically, you look at it, it's not great. But when I watched a couple of his games, I thought he did a good job playing out of that short roll area. He's a good defensive player. And he will step in as their backup center, especially with some of the uncertainty this summer with Naz Reid and Julius Randle at that 4, I guess 5 spot. Naz Reid a little bit there. So they needed some depth here. Makes sense. Certainly a pick that makes sense, and it's about where I thought he would go. Couple of guys that have been sliding a little bit here are on my board. I had Nolan Traore really high, but I didn't expect him to be drafted yet. But who I did expect to be drafted was Kasparas Jakučionis and
Yeah.
Josh Richardson. Jakučionis, both guys though, I thought did have, there were concerns. Jakučionis, I didn't think played very well when they played against great competition, and that was a concern for me. And he wouldn't have been a guy I would have looked to take. Richardson is a guy who I like, but at the same time, he's a 6'1" guard with a 6'6" wingspan. The wingspan helps, but he's at 6'1". He's not a great creator. He's not super explosive or anything. So I understand the slide.
They just did the recap of the French players, and you were, saying that I accidentally had it right, that it was 2 years in a row with like 4 players coming from France and then 2 more selected already. So it's like 10 players coming from France. It's I look, even though that's a fact, if you were just in the midst of a conversation, you would say, if you don't follow the game the way that you do, or even I passively do with regard to who's going to be drafted, if I said to somebody, so how about those French in basketball? It's like an oxymoron that the French are like producing incredible basketball players.
Yeah. Well, in the Netflix documentary where they were covering the Olympics, they said like a lot of this started with Tony Parker.
Yes. Because what you have to keep in mind is obviously if they're being drafted in the last 2 drafts and this draft, it's starting 5, 8, 10 years ago.
More. Really. But yeah, and they've surpassed the Canadians rapidly. And look, US
and total talent coming out of all of Africa, though I think that's going to pick up.
Agreed. Also, some of it's one of those things where some of those guys, they're coming out of France, but their parents may have been from Africa, and
True.
As the infrastructure in Africa improves, some of those guys are just going to be coming from, like a Kaman Malawach from, like a South Sudan or Nigeria.
One of the things we didn't mention in all of as we got caught up in how Mao was falling in the draft, was he followed Luol Deng.
Yes. Yeah. And Luol was a big mentor for him, helping him get going in the academy in Africa, and then ultimately, I think, guiding him in his decision to go to Duke.
Absolutely.
I
think with that, Jack, I may have to say 2 hours with you.
Perfect.
It's been great.
How much more I got as well. I've got to get up early, but this has been fun. And tomorrow I'll be back for the second round. Probably similar to today. Probably won't make it all the way till the end, but
certainly to the 50th pick.
Yes, you're right. Well, you never know. They could trade up or trade down But yeah, we got to get there.
We're
And
talking about our Knicks have one draft pick, number 50.
And I will say tomorrow should be a little bit better because there's less time on the picks. So,
All right. Jack, on behalf of Talking Ball, it's been great. Peace out from the old guy.
we will see you tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to stick around for a few more picks here, guys. It's been fun for those of you who have joined us. Thank you. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop your comments in the live chat there. And yeah, we've got, I'm going to stick around for a couple more picks here. Got some breaking news. Very interesting. Okay, so the 18th pick is going to Utah. Missed the start of what Shams was saying, so I got to wait for the trade details here. And they will be taking Walter Clayton, who, man, Walter Clayton, very good player. Very good player. I think this is appropriate for where he's going to get drafted. And it's a little bit weird. I like Utah. They've got Keontae George. They've got Isaiah Collier. But there's a world where Walter Clayton is just better than those guys. So, yeah. All right. Let me see here. Yeah. So here goes Walter. Walter Clayton. The word that JD used to describe Walter, which I think was apropos, he described him as an assassin. And I definitely took that phrase and ran with it. Walter Clayton just did things for Florida that I think were a bit underrated. He just had a knack for the big moments, an awesome ability to show up when they needed him to, and he did it in a multitude of ways. Yes, everyone talks about the clutch shooting and his ability to hit big shots, but he could also take it to the rim. And what I love the most about Walter, against Houston, the biggest game of the year, national championship game, they made sure he couldn't get his shot off, and he affected the game in other ways. He had a number of assists. He blocked a couple shots. I just think Walter Clayton's a winning player, and we'll see what the trade is for him, but I think depending on how much they gave up, I think it's a good player for Utah to get, but I'm a little bit confused as to what their future outlook is. With that, guys, I'm going to sign off. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the second round. We'll try to do as much as we can here. And yeah, thanks for joining. Subscribe, like this video. Peace.